You thought you were unreadable, but they saw the pause, the hollow laugh, the answer that missed its timing. Nietzsche couldn't ignore these fractures, 18 truths hidden in the spaces between words. And once you see them, the world stops feeling personal. It becomes clear, almost legible. Nietzsche distrusted easy words. He looked instead at where they cracked, between what people said and what their bodies confessed. Long before psychology, he was mapping the contradictions that make us human, not to condemn them, but to see them clearly. In this video, we'll trace 18 of those psychological tells, subtle fractures that expose fear, envy, guilt, and hidden desire. Once you notice them, conversations change. You stop reacting to the performance and begin seeing the person underneath. We leak truth constantly, not in grand confessions, but in micro-fractures, the stiff jaw during "I'm fine," the topic shift when questions get close, the laugh that lingers a beat too long. These aren't slips or accidents, they are part of the architecture. In your next conversation, ask one honest question, then count to 3. If a joke rushes in, that's avoidance. If the answer arrives perfectly polished, that's rehearsal. If they redirect with another question, that's deflection. Now, watch the body. The jaw tightens when someone says, "I'm fine." Fingers white-knuckle a phone while insisting there's no pressure. Eyes glance down before the answer arrives. And when the question turns intimate, the feet quietly angle toward the exit. Words sell a story. The body pays for it. You're not hunting for lies. You're mapping where the performance needs scaffolding. Those are the weak points in the glass. Truth 1. Everyone wears armor, but armor has weak points. Every profound spirit needs a mask, Nietzsche wrote in Beyond Good and Evil. Armor is never flawless. Given enough pressure, it always cracks. Watch for the tells. Ask one follow-up question. Do their shoulders rise? Do their eyes break contact before the answer comes? Do their feet edge toward the exit when questions grow specific? The armor isn't the problem. Mistaking it for the person beneath is. Ask yourself, what made their shoulders tense when you followed up? Truth 2. What they attack in others lives inside them. When someone constantly mocks attention seekers, check their social media. Meticulously curated humility is still performance. We don't hate randomly, we hate precisely. And that precision is a confession written in judgment. The man who can't stop pointing out arrogance, he's wrestling with his own self-worth. The woman who shames fake people, she's at war with her own performance. Every criticism is autobiography. It reveals more about the speaker than the target. If their target shifts with the room, that's not conscience, it's projection. And when you judge someone harshly, pause, ask yourself, which trait in them mirrors something you've avoided in yourself? Truth 3. Silence speaks louder than speech. Count to 3 after asking a real question. What fills the silence? A joke, a deflection, or a sigh? Nietzsche knew language often conceals more than it reveals. When someone pauses before answering, dodges certain topics, or delivers rehearsed replies, that silence is screaming. Avoiding vulnerability is itself a revelation. It shows exactly where the deepest fear lives. When they laugh, ask yourself, what feeling would arrive if the joke didn't? Count to 3 after your next real question and notice what fills the space. Truth 4. Self-deception comes first, always. We are unknown to ourselves, Nietzsche wrote in The Genealogy of Morals. The lies people tell you, "I'm over it, I don't care," aren't manipulations. They've rehearsed them so long, they believe them. Their inconsistencies aren't random, they're systematic. They show exactly where reality collides with the story they need to survive. When words say fine, scan the voice and the jaw for the truth beneath. Truth 5. Loud virtue hides hunger for superiority. Real service happens off camera. When goodness requires an audience, you're not seeing virtue, you're seeing the will to power dressed as morality. The one who always corrects others, always postures as more pure, more conscious. They're not teaching, they're competing. Ask yourself, does their goodness vanish without witnesses? Truth 6. Superiority performs when inferiority aches. Behind every throne sits someone terrified they don't belong there. If someone constantly reminds you of their achievements, it's often because they fear they're not enough. True confidence doesn't compete. Performed confidence is brittle, defensive under pressure, and exhausting to maintain. Notice how often their accomplishments surface unprompted. Here's a quick pattern map. Projection is when hostility locks onto a single trait. I only hate show-offs. That's a mirror. Silence shows up as gaps around one subject: money, status, intimacy. That's a trap door. And virtue on display. That's goodness performed for an audience. It isn't morality, it's theater. That's the stage. Read them together: mirror, trapdoor, stage. Someone who lectures generosity but avoids talking about money is signaling image over intimacy. Someone who mocks attention seekers while carefully curating humility is signaling status by subtraction. You're not gathering red flags, you're tracing a through line. And the more consistent the line across situations, the closer you are to the engine that drives them. Think of someone you struggle with. Identify 3 things: the mirror, what you harshly judge in them; the trapdoor, the topics they won't touch; the stage, where they perform for the crowd. Put them together, and you'll see the engine driving them. The patterns are forming, the glass is beginning to crack. Coming next, when the facade breaks entirely. People don't wear armor at random. They crack under specific pressures, and what leaks out in those moments reveals their core programming. Think about these 3 quick scenes. In the meeting room, he interrupts, corrects, and wraps every idea in his own voice. Later, he sends a 1,200-word recap no one asked for. That isn't confidence, it's vanish avoidance. At the dinner table, she laughs before the punchline and freezes when plans suddenly change. That isn't high standards, it's collapse avoidance. In a text thread, they reply instantly to logistics but vanish when it turns personal. That isn't busyness, it's exposure avoidance. Don't moralize, label the avoidance. Labels are more useful than stories: vanish, collapse, exposure. Once you name the loss being protected, status, control, or belonging, the behavior stops feeling random. It becomes predictable. Next, why envy so often wears the mask of virtue. Truth 7. Fear drives behavior more than desire. Thoughts are the shadows of our feelings, Nietzsche wrote in The Gay Science. Ask yourself, what would this person do anything to avoid losing? Status, belonging, or control? The person who dominates every conversation isn't hungry for attention. They're terrified of disappearing. The one who says yes to everything isn't generous. They're terrified of rejection. To understand people, don't ask what they want. Ask what they can't afford to lose. Most patterns protect one of 3 losses: status. You'll hear resume-sized stories and subtle one-upmanship. Belonging. You'll see endless yes-saying and conflict avoidance until resentment leaks out sideways. Control. You'll feel rigid plans, tense faces, and storms over the smallest surprises. Name the loss, and suddenly the behavior isn't about you at all. Truth 8. Criticism is not analysis, it's autobiography. When someone criticizes constantly, listen closely. They're revealing what's broken inside them. Every complaint has an origin story. The colleague who can't stop pointing out mistakes. They weren't allowed to make any. The friend who mocks emotional people. They learned early that feelings were dangerous. Projection chooses the target, but repetition, that reveals the frequency. When the complaints never end, it's no longer observation, it's confession. Ask yourself, what problem in their life would disappear if this one complaint vanished? Notice the theme across a week of their criticism. You'll start to see the autobiography inside the noise. Truth 9. Confidence often costumes guilt. Watch for the one who seems chronically certain, never wrong, always composed. Look at the tells. They over-prepare for everything. Their humor turns brittle under pressure, and they can't admit even the smallest mistake. Performed certainty often hides something they can't forgive in themselves. Real peace doesn't need to prove itself. Offer them the tiniest correction, just 2 words. If they bristle, you've touched the seam in the costume. Truth 10. Exaggeration reveals the insecurity underneath. When someone speaks in absolutes, always, never, don't care, doubt is screaming beneath the surface. The more extreme the claim, the louder the fear it's trying to muffle. Extremes are microphones for insecurity. So the next time you hear absolutes like always or never, pause. What sounds like certainty is usually a mask for fear. Truth 11. Control addiction masks inner chaos. One must still have chaos in oneself to give birth to a dancing star, Nietzsche wrote in Thus Spoke Zarathustra. Those who cannot accept their own inner chaos try to cage the world instead. The micromanager who controls every detail, the one who can't handle uncertainty, the person who tries to control others to feel safe. Something inside them feels utterly out of control. Control is nothing more than a love letter to an anxious nervous system. Change a single small variable in their world and watch the overreaction. There are a handful of tells that give this pattern away. Brittle certainty. They refuse even the smallest correction, and their humor thins the instant they're challenged. Absolute speech. Words like always, never, everyone, or no one. Control rituals. Lives divided into rigid 15-minute blocks, with irritation when joy arrives unplanned. Rehearsed warmth. A smile that appears before the eyes catch up. When the eyes smile late, the warmth was practiced. You don't need to confront any of this. Noticing is enough. The moment you can name the pattern, you stop being dragged by it. Truth 12. Loud performance signals an empty core. They curate meetings, apologies, even laughter, editing themselves in real time. But wholeness doesn't audition. Pay attention to the difference between their public warmth and their private depth. The cracks are widening, and beneath the facade, beneath the fear, something deeper is driving human behavior. Adults insist, "I'm just like this," but childhood says otherwise. Most people don't act out their beliefs, they act out their wounds. What you're seeing is choreography written long ago. Truth 13. People fear being seen more than being hurt. Pain is temporary, but exposure feels permanent. To be truly seen threatens the identity we built to survive. Watch how someone reacts to intimacy. Do they deflect with humor, change the subject, create distance? They're not protecting their feelings. They're protecting the story of who they are. Exposure threatens the ego's continuity. Ask a gentle personal question and notice the distance that follows. Truth 14. What someone defends most, they doubt most deeply. The person who over-explains their beliefs, who bristles at questions, who cannot tolerate another viewpoint, they aren't convincing you. They're trying to convince themselves. Rigid certainty often hides profound uncertainty. Dogma is fear with a megaphone. So ask, what would change if you were just 5% wrong? Invite them to give their best counter-argument to their own belief. Truth 15. The hunger to be remembered reveals the terror of being forgotten. The one who always needs center stage, whose every story circles back to themselves, this isn't vanity, it's existential panic. The child who was ignored grows into the adult who overcompensates. They don't create noise because they love attention. They do it because they can't bear silence. Leave a silence mid-story and watch if they rush back to center stage. Truth 16. Envy wears the mask of moral outrage. People don't usually attack what they despise. They attack what they secretly desire, but feel they'll never have. Tearing down success, mocking confidence, changing the subject when asked what they admire. It isn't cruelty, it's pain. Envy is desire, wearing the costume of righteousness. They call someone's results luck, but can't name a single skill that person practiced. So, when you hear an attack, ask yourself, what would they secretly admire here? Truth 17. People act out childhood, not adult beliefs. Behavior is biography. The adult who dominates conversations was once ignored. The one who hides emotions was punished for expressing them. The performer was taught love had to be earned. We think we're acting from mature beliefs. In reality, we're replaying childhood survival strategies on adult stages. Ask yourself, who did they have to be to feel safe? Think of childhood as a triad, a key that unlocks adult behavior. When a child is ignored, it often leads to volume. If you weren't heard, you learn to get loud, interrupting, over-explaining, performing certainty just to stay visible. When a child is punished for their feelings, it leads to ice. You learn to go cold, trading warmth for logic, sharp arguments, and edges that never soften. And when love comes with conditions, it leads to stage. You learn to audition, perfect timing, flawless competence, applause as oxygen. Adults insist, I'm just like this. But biography explains choreography. Recognize the origin, and you stop wrestling with the symptom. We carry that choreography everywhere, into boardrooms and bedrooms, into jokes, silences, and the way we leave messages unread. We call it personality, but it's history moving our mouth. Truth 18. Rigid worldviews reveal fragile identities. The more inflexible someone's beliefs, the more desperate they are to avoid collapse. They don't cling to dogma out of certainty. They cling because uncertainty terrifies them. Over-defense is a moment. Rigidity is a lifestyle. Defense argues. Rigidity cannot imagine otherwise. Flexibility doesn't betray identity. It updates it. Offer some ambiguity and watch carefully. Do they bend or do they break? And yes, turn the lens back on yourself. Where do you correct? Where do you deflect? Where do you perform? Reading others without reading yourself is just another mask. There's a moment when everything shifts. You listen to someone complain or boast or criticize, and for the first time, you don't react. You simply see them, the pattern, the fear, the wound driving the behavior. And suddenly you realize It was never about you. Don't ask, what do they believe? Ask instead, what pain would collapse if they stopped believing this? The criticism that used to sting, you recognize it now as autobiography. The coldness that used to hurt, you see it as armor. The arrogance that used to intimidate, you understand it as overcompensation. Once you see the wound, anger loses its job, not colder, clearer. For the next 24 hours, try this. Don't react. Just label the pattern: control, applause, vanish, then ask, which loss does it protect? Status, belonging, or control? Then turn it on yourself. Consider your own top two, the patterns you run and the losses they protect. Keep a simple field note for one day. In each interaction, jot down 3 things: the pattern you saw, the loss it was protecting, and your own impulse and response. 1 line each time. That's enough. Watch what happens to anger. It shrinks. Not because you excuse behavior, but because you stop mistaking someone else's protection plan for your problem. Every pattern you recognize in others exists somewhere in yourself. Every defense you decode, every wound you witness, they're variations on themes you already know. Reading people isn't superiority, it's solidarity. We're all just trying to survive in bodies that remember every hurt, and in minds that built armor before we could choose better strategies. The deepest truth isn't about reading others. It's realizing that what you once took personally was never personal at all. It was just someone else's pain colliding with yours in the dark. And now that you see clearly, you face a choice. Will you use this vision to build walls or bridges? Clarity isn't distance, it's precision. It allows you to choose the bridge on purpose or set the boundary without guilt. The armor was only glass. It was never really hiding you. Now that you can see through it, use that vision to choose grace. In the comments, add yours to the pattern library. Vanish, collapse, exposure, volume, ice, stage. Which one did you spot today? And what loss did it protect? Status, belonging, or control?